with every sip. Coffee's the juice swirling in the cool night.
Well, I haven't got the applause cued because I haven't had my coffee yet, but good morning, Alan.
I have my martini, so I'll applaud.
How is that martini this afternoon? I hear it's pretty chilly still.
It's 36 Fahrenheit here right now, and the snow is melting. We've still got about a foot covering the entire property. And, the dogs love it. And we have to trudge over to the pond in boots to feed the ducks and things like this.
Oh,
But
wow.
I've learned I can talk to the ducks. I'm multilingual now. When
Tell
I go out,
me.
the pond is 2 acres and it goes over a waterfall and so on. So when I go whack, 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 they come. They identify with it, and they come from a lagoon we have. And, it takes them a while because they can't fly. And we feed them every morning.
I didn't think so. Do you really think it's the quacking, or do you think that you've trained the ducks to know that at this certain time when they see this big bag and Alan wandering over, like, what do you think? Is it really the sound?
Well,
I mean, it was a pretty impressive quack, but
I'll tell you why. No, it is an impressive quack. I mean, it's a Berlitz quack. When the ducks see us, even if we're driving back from dinner, they'll come over. But they spend the night in a lagoon that you can't see the house from. And so they're back there and they don't know when I come out. They're not like a dog that can hear well and so on. But when I quack at them, they can hear that. The wild ducks fly over, but these white ducks can't fly. They flap their wings like crazy. And then they make a crash landing, and come sliding over on the ice. It's really pretty funny.
I think I love ducks. They're so delightful. Every time we got some like local ponds around here, and they're just beautiful animals. And I didn't expect that we'd be starting this conversation on no guilt, no fear, no peer by you quacking, but I'm glad that it started that way. How else has your week been? And let us know in chat. Do you love ducks as much as we do? You've had a good week?
Had a very good week. Things are good considering the weather here. But things are good. We'll go out for dinner on Valentine's on Saturday to our favorite place.
Yeah.
And tonight I'm on my own, though. My wife has a meeting. And so I'm going to go to a very high-end restaurant, eat at the bar, and I'm going to have them. I bring hamburger rolls and cheese, and they grind up a prime rib and make me 2 gigantic cheese.
Delicious. Fantastic. This your own little Valentine celebration before the, yeah.
Me, yeah.
Yeah, and you've been doing some book stuff as well. I hear you've been recording your audios.
Recorded this twice this week. I finished. This is my record. I recorded the entire book in 2 seatings, about 3 hours each, 5 chapters a time. And I do it in the morning because I'm fresh. My voice is good.
Yeah.
So next week I'll do the next book, and I'm chugging along.
Wow, fantastic. Great to hear. I've got my manuscript due in about just over a month. So I'm trying to just write without editing, and then I'll definitely go back and cut out some words. We've got Dee Dee here. Great to have you here, Dee Dee. Thanks for joining us. Let us know where you're joining us from. If you're from back at home, Dee Dee, I know you travel around the world. So let us know where you are joining us from. Alan, today's topic, we're looking at, I love this phrase, no guilt, no fear, no peer. But what started this was you responded to my email and said you wanted to really differentiate between ego and esteem. What is there something that brought this up for you? Like, have you just been hearing them used interchangeably, or?
Well, a couple of days ago, I finished my 5th book that will come out this year called The Courage of Your Talent. And the book is dedicated to esteem. I think it's a chronic problem today globally.
Yeah.
And can you imagine? I had a hard time getting a publisher after my history. So, this pissed me off tremendously. So I put together a formal, bulletproof battleship of a proposal, which I don't usually have to do. And the publisher, Taylor and Francis, says to me, "Alan, this is great." I said, "You rejected it the first time." He said, "I saw this before." I said, "Yes, you did." He said, "We'll send you a contract tomorrow." So esteem is fascinating me. And as far as the phrase that you picked up, no guilt, no fear, no peer, that occurred just extemporaneously when Colleen Francis, whom you know, asked me in a program once. She said, "What makes you so damn confident?" And I said, "No guilt, no fear, no peer. I walk into it, I own it. Prove me wrong." And so that phrase now has been circulated in my community. But going back to the book, the reason I said to you I'd like to talk about this is that people use ego and esteem interchangeably, and they're not synonyms. Ego is an external device to protect your identity. It's who people want to be seen as. They want to protect a certain image they've created. It's external. Esteem is an internal device that tells you you're worthy, despite whether you're successful or not, despite what other people say. But as a human, your identity is that you're worthy. And these are often confused. And here's the real issue. Egos, because they're externally supported, are fragile and they can be smashed. And it happens a lot. You know, you get killed in an athletic event, or somebody comes out and does something better than you do, or they prove you're wrong. Your ego is smashed. But esteem doesn't suffer from that. You know what esteem suffers from? Neglect.
Neglect.
Isn't that fascinating?
Yes.
And this is part of what my book's about. And people simply neglect their own esteem, and it nosedives, it deteriorates.
Okay, yeah. I mean, I definitely want to talk about neglecting your esteem in a second. But it is funny when you talked about ego being external. I just think of LinkedIn. It just seems like it's the ego network, you know?
You want to measure a person's ego, see how many rules they put up on how leaders should act. Here are 14 rules on what a leader has to do, right? By the time a leader reads them, the crisis is gone.
Talk about like what the symptoms are as well as part of this conversation. I just want to give a shout out to Amy, who's joining us from the Sunshine Coast. G'day, Amy. Jasmine from I was going to say Brainy, Brisbane. It is brainy and it is rainy as well. And Dee Dee's joining us from sunny San Jose, probably the only place in the world where the weather is actually quite decent right now. It's very humid and lots of storms today. Let's talk about neglecting your esteem. Does this happen? I mean, it doesn't happen overnight. I'm sure it's like a gradual decline of neglecting it.
Well, it is a gradual decline, but the reason it is a sharp decline is that people don't think about it.
Yeah.
What the default position is, I was wrong, I'm guilty, I shouldn't have done that. And then people guilt you. Guilt's become a verb, you know?
Yeah.
And they guilt you for something, and you don't know how to handle the guilt. And so you don't stop to say, I'm a worthy person. You don't stop to think about the fact that just because your efficacy is low in something doesn't mean you're unworthy. And the difference is, you and I need efficacy in things important to our calling, right? So we have to be able to write and speak, coach, and things like that. But I can't play a musical instrument. I cannot even play the radio, for God's sakes. And so I have low efficacy there, but it doesn't affect my future. So I don't feel bad because I can't learn a musical instrument. I tried to learn to play tennis once. I thought that would be fun because I played racquetball. And the instructor on the very first day says to me, okay, we'll start with the serve. When you throw the ball up, there are 10 things you have to remember. I said, no, I don't. I'm gone. That's work. That's not a sport. That's work. Golf is work.
Well, I would argue that coach probably had it all wrong because, it's impossible to think of 10 at the first go. Like, always focus on one, spin the plate. I reckon you'd be good at serving if you had a decent coach. Anyway, let's talk about worthiness. We see it all the time, like this mental health epidemic. And you said we've got to tell ourselves that we're worthy. But I guess people genuinely don't believe that. And that is a real problem. And is it because we are conflating ego? We actually don't believe that we are worthy?
Yes, we feel like imposters. You're exactly right.
Yeah.
You know, Dr. Rose Clance wrote The Imposter Phenomenon. God, it must be 1986 or something like that. And, she interviewed executives and athletes and entertainers, and over 80% felt like they would be found out, that they were imposters. So your ego starts to compensate for that, but your self-esteem crashes because of that. If you give an actor an award, the award's for being somebody they're not. It's for portraying someone else. So it's the default position is to feel bad. The default position is to, well, it's like I say when you try to write a book, which you're writing.
Yeah.
Don't self-edit.
No.
Don't say to yourself, "Oh, it could have been better."
Yeah.
Oh, it wasn't 4 points; it should have been 5 points.
Yes.
I advise in my book, look, you need devices so your esteem isn't neglected. In other words, sit down, write a list of 10 great things you did over the past month, personal and professional. Next month, do the same. Just journal the list. In the morning, talk about 3 positive things you'll do today. In the evening, talk about 3 positive things you did today. So we're constantly battered by normative pressure, by social media, by influencers. You ought to be this, you ought to be that.
Yeah. Well, it's true. And I think what, you talked about neglect, and you've just given us some practical ways of actually being intentional and building your esteem. So it seems like you have to be kind of on the offensive around this because of everything else that's battering us. Something as well, social media, the comparisonitis, that can impact your ego first, and then it impacts your esteem. How do we stop that?
Well, you need to stand up for yourself.
Mm.
I just got this note yesterday. Somebody had posted something, and someone on LinkedIn said, "I don't get what you mean by that." It says, "It makes no sense to me, and I think you're wrong." And he was disturbed by this. This is one person of millions of people on LinkedIn, who probably, isn't even successful. But we take it so seriously because we're
Yeah.
critiqued.
Yes.
And I tell people, always consider the source. If you want accurate feedback, ask somebody you respect. If you listen to feedback that's arbitrarily given by people you didn't request it from, you're a ping pong ball.
I know, like you always talk about feedback and smile sheets for workshops and things like that. And I was on a call the other day with a fellow consultant. She's like, "Oh yeah, the gig went really well. They gave me 4.7 out of 5. I didn't like pass on what you would say, but what would you say to that person in that situation?"
I would
Talks about
say to
smile
him that he
sheet.
needs to change his metrics because smile sheets mean nothing because the audience is the worst group to ask. I'm often called upon, I know this is hard to believe, to piss off an audience. I'm called upon to shake them up. I'm not calling, you see, it's about respect, not affection. And so the audience, you don't ask the audience, you ask the buyer. How is that? Did I meet your needs? Did I exceed your needs? How is that? But if you're worried about smile sheets, you're never going to take a risk. You're never going to be controversial. You're never going to be contrarian because you're trying to please everyone and it waters you down.
That's so good. That is so, so good. Even as I'm writing, like I think I'm saying, like I'm writing some points and I'm like, oh, is this too like over the top? Am I expecting too much from the reader? And it's like, actually, the reader does need to do this. So I'm going to write it. But yeah, if I was to tone it down a bit, it would probably just be like every other book out there. So anyway, what Terry that's joining us from Omaha, I've actually been to Omaha. I really enjoyed it. I was there in 2019. Have you been to Omaha? G'day, Terry.
I've been to Nebraska.
Yeah.
My wife and I drove back from the coast where we used to live in San Francisco. And we went through Nebraska. There's a lot of corn out there, man. I'll tell you what.
Yeah, I do remember flying in and just going, wow, this is like, I've flown in from New York. So it was like the complete opposite of
Yeah,
where
yeah.
I'd just been. I wanted to call out, like, your tagline on LinkedIn is the rock star of consulting. I would imagine that's like it's an ego phrase, but I think the people that know, I think it's funny. But sometimes I'll quote you in the sessions I run with clients and I'm like, oh yeah, Alan Weiss, he's like the rock star of consulting. And they're like, in Australia, they're like, oh yeah. And people think about, I don't know, I think maybe they think about the ego associated with that. Talk more about your tagline.
Well,
And
first of all, somebody called me that. I mean, somebody, and I thought it was great,
I love it.
because Mick Jagger is a year or two older than I am,
Yeah.
so I really liked it. But I really did it to annoy people.
Oh,
And when I annoy them, they remember me. When I annoy them, they get interested in my work. Who is he to call himself the rock star of consulting? Why is he the rock star of consulting? But it really draws people to me, and people, there's a groove with it. One of the times I spoke in Australia, somebody said, Alan, I don't know if you should use that phrase here. I said, why? I've been coming to Australia since the 70s. He said, well, there's a woman here who calls herself the consultant's consultant. And she might be offended by this. I said, well, I don't really care. But why don't you invite her to my meeting for free? Tell her I'd love to meet her, to meet the consultant's consultant for free, and have her come. She didn't accept.
Okay, let's talk about symptoms of poor self-esteem. The symptoms of that, like let's just we'll take consultants as an example. It could be like self-talk during an event. It could be proposals. How do you see low self-esteem playing out in the way that consultants behave with their clients?
Well, consultants who have low self-esteem will not push back. They will be pushed around. And so the client says, oh, listen, I know we were supposed to meet, but I need another 30 minutes. So you go cool your heels. Or the day before, the client says, look, tomorrow's no good. I want you to come next week. So you cancel some appointment, even a personal appointment. The client says, no, that's not the way. The client tells you how to consult.
Yes.
And God forbid, fees will just murder you because you're afraid, because you don't value yourself. See, if you agree with me, the fees are based on value. Yet you feel you have no value, you're not going to provide very high fees.
No.
And I tell people all the time, they say, Alan, you're so expensive. I don't know if I can invest in it. I say, listen, the greatest investment you can ever make is in yourself.
Agreed.
Those are where the biggest returns on investment are. If you don't believe that, why should anybody else? And that's what happens to it. And we hear all this crap, Leanne, humility, servant leadership, and all this. Nobody wants a servant leader. They want a strong leader who makes tough decisions and knows how to fire people, knows how to really steer the ship. People want consultants who will bring in fresh air and not breathe their own exhaust. One of the tests I use when somebody wants to go into one of my coaching programs is I'll listen to them, and then I'll say, arbitrarily, I don't think you have a good business model.
You'll just say that.
I'll just say that. And people will say, someone say, well, you know something, Alan, I think I do, but if you don't think I do, I'm willing to listen. Okay, you're good. Somebody else will say, gee, can you explain that? And I say, well, of course I can. They're in. But some people say, you can't touch my business model. It's been successful for me. Yeah, then why are you talking to me? You're out.
So you have like some screening questions that kind of tells you where they're at with, I guess, their growth mindset, really.
It's a litmus test.
That's really cool.
You've got to be willing to change.
Yeah. Dee 100% agrees with that. I agree with it too. Let's talk about value. I was talking to someone the other day who actually is a leader within a business, and they've just got this like fear of posting on LinkedIn. The fear is that they don't have value. And we had this conversation, and I think it's sometimes hard to believe your own value because you're stuck in your own head and you know what you know, and you assume other people know this because it's just so obvious to you. I find this really hard as well. Like I think, oh, I know, but then I share something and I realize, oh, people don't think about it this way. How do you give yourself credit for the value that you do have? It's kind of like a meta question.
Are you talking how I do it or how a person should do it?
How a person should like, I guess, uncover and realize that the value is actually valuable.
Well, really, it's contained in your question. You have to say to yourself, have I truly helped people? And what's the evidence that I've helped people? And sometimes people will say, oh my God, that is brilliant. And you'll say, this is the simplest thing in the world. But what you have to understand is you just tremendously help someone. And so we all have different routes we go down.
Yeah.
And, we don't know everything about everything.
Yeah.
So, I mean, it was incredible. People used to tell me, well, listen, I can do better. Value-based fees are for other people. I can do better charging by the hour. I say, sit down and do the math. Just sit down and show me how that works. Because people are stuck in these grooves. I do a minute with Alan every weekday on social media. And a couple of days ago, I did the calf path. And it's about a calf that makes a wandering trail.
Oh, yes.
That will follow forever. And what happens is we have to get them off that path because what they're following is something that wasn't intended for them. The calf was looking for some grass or something, not trying to create a metropolis, right?
That poem, The Calf Path, I remember you read that out in Vegas. It is such a good poem. So if you are watching this, just open a separate tab, come back to us, but Google like The Calf Path, CALF, just because of my Australian, you may not understand that I said calf, CALF. Hey, look, perception is, like in marketing, it's like perception is reality. So a lot of the time you're kind of creating a narrative. And what you talked about ego was that it is external. So I'm just going to ask, like, is it good sometimes? Like, is focusing on the ego a good thing sometimes? Because you're, trying to build this narrative around maybe all this perception to the market.
Well, there's the ego and the id and the superego, and they all have these regulatory powers. And they're healthy if they're well attuned and used right, and they're unhealthy if they're not. And so an ego can be a very important controlling mechanism for our behavior. But we have to be based in reality. So, if somebody enters a room dressed bizarrely, let's say, and people say, oh my God, look at how that person is dressed. What are they thinking? Well, they're thinking they dress just fine because their image is that that's good and it doesn't match your image. So we have to help to reconcile that. I don't mean by critiquing the clothing. I mean by not focusing on the clothing and focusing on the person. Otherwise, we make these ego judgments. Well, I'm better dressed than they are. I'm smarter than they are. And on it goes. I talked to a client the other day, and he said to me, listen, I'm so tired of people achieving more than I do who are dumber than I am. And I said, if they're achieving more than you are, how are they dumber than you are? Give me an example. And he explained personality traits. He explained they're abrupt, they're rude, they can't get along with people. And I said, yes, but that's not a question of intelligence. That's a question of behavior. or antisocial behavior or pathology or something. So,
Mm.
we have to pay attention to the fact that we sometimes create an identity for ourselves that's shattered. That's why I used that word before. When we come up against someone who's not going to have any of that stuff.
Yeah, it's I feel bad because I was talking to another consultant last week. They were speaking at a conference. They were coming on stage, and the speaker beforehand had pretty much just like killed the room. Like there was no energy. It was super flat. And one of the things they were talking about was SMART goals. And I just was like, what the heck? It's like 2026. People are getting paid to talk about SMART goals, and I kind of went on my own thing. Maybe that was an ego thing from me, and maybe I have to look past that. But if that company thinks that's useful, I don't know. Like I get very frustrated when I see people getting paid well for stuff that is 50 years old. Do I need to check myself, Alan?
Well, you see a driver who turns without a directional or who cuts you off, and some people go into road rage. So my advice to you is not to go into life rage.
Yes, yes,
There are going to be people
yes,
like that. And that's why all the humor I use on stage, and I'm sure you're probably this way too, is self-effacing humor.
yeah, yes.
Because then people say, "Oh yeah, I've done that stupid thing too." But if I point to other people, that's kind of arrogant.
Yeah, yeah, you're right. You're right. That's great. Thank you. And on that note, is it Nabosa? Hopefully, I've pronounced your name semi
No,
okay. Alan for president. There you go. You've got 2 votes. I'll vote for you. Terry is laughing. Lewis, g'day. Let us know where you're joining us from. Lewis says g'day as well. Jasmine, yes, evidence is key to quiet the doubt. Love that. Yeah, and like what I do sometimes, I get nice emails from time to time or comments, and I'll just screenshot them and put them in a folder. So I can, sometimes when I'm not feeling the best, like look at that and go, actually, I do have, I can contribute. I do have value to offer as well. So those are good ways to build esteem with intention. What else do you think is important on this topic that our listeners should know more about? I mean, like we said, ego isn't so bad. It's all about like a healthy bit, moderating it well. Is there anything else we can do to build our esteem?
Yeah, let's go back to the phrase that you wanted to use today, which we've been talking about.
Yeah.
No fear, no peer, no guilt, and we have to conquer our fears because most of the things that we fear are really just fear themselves. I think Churchill said that, I believe,
Mm.
and there's fight and flight and also fright, and too many people are frightened. They're frightened that they won't do well and people will critique them. They're frightened that somebody will call them a liar or say that their work isn't good enough. And I'm just shocked. I put all kinds of stuff out in all the media I can all over the world, right?
Yeah.
But some people are afraid to put anything out because someone will find fault with it and then they'll have to defend themselves. You don't have to defend yourself against a critic. You don't have to defend yourself against someone who you didn't ask for feedback. If you walk into the park, there are statues of heroes in the park and statues of artists. There are no statues of critics.
What do you do then? Do you just ignore it? I mean, I've seen not defend it, but you write very good comments in response. Like that is a super strength of yours, is your ability to kind of rebut, I would say.
Well, yeah, I mean, because see, it's stressful if you just like you were a little stressed before when you don't like people making money who aren't doing a good enough job. A little stressful for you, and so
Yeah, yeah.
my wife says I'm not stressed because I'm a carrier, and I give stress to other people. That's why I respond. And I say, this is, I mean, I could say this is the stupidest thing I've ever seen. But what I do say is, that 52% of American workplaces are toxic. And I say, what's your basis for that? What study? I don't have them.
Yeah.
Just made up stuff. And so people are making up opinions to try to give substance and pass them off as facts. You got to puncture that. And, that makes me feel better.
Yeah. This phrase, no guilt, no fear, no peer. I think guilt is definitely something that impacts people. Again, another conversation, I'm not going to mention names, with another consultant the other week. He thought his project with a client wasn't going well. And so we were just talking about that. Then the next day he met up with the client and they were like, oh no, it was absolutely what we wanted. It's, like they gave him like effusively great feedback. And he'd spent 24 hours just mulling over it and feeling sorry for himself. What could he have done in that moment? I mean, I was telling him like, don't mull over it, but
you have to isolate yourself from approval by others.
Mm.
And you have to have metrics which tell you that you're worthy. And then you have to have metrics which tell you how efficacious you were, right? So
Yes.
you base it with,
Yeah.
I'm a worthy person no matter what. And then you say, did I test for understanding? Did people seem to understand what I was saying? Uh, I'm not concerned with whether people laughed or not. I am concerned as to whether they had questions for me, because questions are a sign of
Yeah.
interest. In fact,
Yeah.
objections are a sign of interest. And I'd rather have objections than apathy.
Yes.
So you have
Yeah.
your own metrics and you say, okay, or my wife is a great is a great feedback giver. So one point she said to me, I walked off stage, it was terrible, and she said, Alan, you couldn't have done anything better. That was a dull group. It was a black hole. I don't want you to worry about it.
Nice.
Gone. Another time I walked off stage and she said to me, what the hell were you thinking?
Oh, it's so good. It's like, it's really nice to hear these stories of how, because you think the rock star of consulting, you've been doing this for some time, obviously, to hear that there's still situations where, you can't really control everything. And so I think that's it. It's life. And these are good learning moments.
Yeah, and I'm a great relativist. In other words, oh God, the car got a dent in it. Yeah, but we're healthy. You know,
Yeah.
Yeah,
Yes.
this
Yes.
this was freckle. It wasn't, melanoma. So you have to keep things in perspective because people get all worked up over relatively minor stuff.
Oh, but all the time. I saw this really funny Instagram video. It was this guy and he said, play this before your next team meeting. And the video was just a reminder that we're all going to die one day. So let's put that in perspective before we have this meeting. I thought it was excellent. Just like zooming out. It's like a lot of the stuff doesn't really matter. Yes, do your best, but gosh.
I'll tell you one of my favorite ego stories. It's 2,500 years ago, and there are two people on a camel, and the camel has a license plate like a car would have a license plate, and there's a sticker, and it says, "Our son is an honor student." You see that on cars here.
Oh, do you?
And then another camel pulls up, and their sticker says, "Our son is the son of God." And the first couple say, "There's that damn Mary and Joseph again."
That's funny. Like, hang on. Like in America, they actually have stickers that say our son or daughter is an honest student.
Yeah, they put like a sticker on their trunk.
I can't believe that. See,
Oh yeah.
there are, like, we think, oh yeah, America, like we're so different culturally sometimes. When I hear stuff like that would not go down well here. But like, it's nice to celebrate. I think that's great. Alan, we're catching up again next month on the 13th of March. So we look forward to seeing, thanks for joining us then. If you've got any more questions, let us know in chat. Any final, I guess, words or reflections on what we've just covered today, Alan?
Well, I'm glad you picked this topic and it meshes with what I'm doing this year. I think that, if the 1% pickup here, I think for most people would be this. You control more than you think. You control your ego and you control your esteem. And so take control, because if other people start to control these through influence or whatever, you're not leading your own life.
Yeah, fantastic. I think that's a really great note to finish the week on. And I've just thrown up QR codes if you want to join. Read our musings on the weekly. Got Alan's memo up the top there. My weekly memo too. Let's see. I'm just getting used to clicking around on the screen here, which has been really quite fun.
Oh, and everything. My God.
I know. Look, we're slowly getting better. DD shares that Alan's esteem machine had me answer a cold call and immediately say yes to selling at an 800 lot auction next weekend. No foo! If I could have the applause, I would play that. Amazing, DD. Thanks so much, Alan. Thank you for talking the walk this week. Thanks for joining us.
Well, it's good to see you, Leanne. Welcome back from the mountaintop.
Cheers.
Bye-bye.